start recording and I'll share my screen. Welcome to day 5 of Reconfiguring Your Library Program, Embracing Uncertainty. I appreciate those of you who have stayed with us through the whole 5 days. I think I might do this again in the future, but do it only as maybe 2 or 3 days. Because I think some of it can be combined and still be really effective. So day 5 is about relationships and reflections. And Lynn was just sharing with us that she got an email from a teacher today about when 6th grade orientation would be occurring. And, you know, in yesterday's, I believe it was yesterday, maybe it was Wednesday, we spoke about, I guess it was Wednesday, we talked about rearranging your curriculum. How do you want to teach just in case our modality has to change? Right now, Lynn is starting in person, and she's going to have classes that can come into the library, we think. And she'll have an advisory, but you know, perhaps the typical orientation isn't going to be her priority for this year. Maybe she wants to teach some of the skills in case things go to a remote session again. So how do you communicate? How do you build those relationships in this new way? And then we'll just take a few minutes to reflect. So I had mentioned earlier on in the class that a former student of mine was a co-author for a book called Effective School Librarianship. It's really a textbook kind of book. It's by Apple Academic Press, and it's stories of our professional practice from school librarians all over the world. And it's pretty interesting because the same topics are really international. The same issues are international. And that was one of the things that I liked about looking through the book, because she interviewed me, and it's basically my voice that's in the chapter. And my chapter it's all about building relationships. And I think one of the things that COVID has done in general in the world is taught us the importance of our social relationships, of our work relationships, how much we really, you know, get nourished by that, maybe how much we get drained by it too, but how we are really all interconnected. And when we think about relationships in terms of being a school media specialist, we know that students and teachers are, you know, the primary people that we've tried to build relationships with. And as our role as a program administrator, we also have tried to build relationships with administrators. One of the things that I don't think most of us have focused on, but has become something we probably should focus on, is families and caregivers. I found this quote that I shared, because I do like sharing quotes, about building strong relationships with students lets them know that they're valued members of the learning community. And that's really just about human beings. Building strong relationships with human beings shows them or makes them feel like they're valued. I see you. I hear you. I understand that you have information needs. You know, this goes in our personal relationships, but it's really important that everyone that we work with knows that we value their contribution. The parents are obviously who most fall into this category of family and caregivers, but I really try to expand our view a little bit on that. I had volunteered with GLSEN for a while, which is the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network. And they really gave me a new sensitivity to some of what our students may have as their family living arrangements. Some people are actually not with their families. They might be with in a group setting. So we just want to make sure that we're incorporating all of those different types of families and caregivers, and not making students feel uncomfortable when we say parents. So, we're the cute little kitties in the center, and I basically have the four people or four groups of people that we really need to start thinking about building those relationships with. Now, it's going to be hard because it's not a normal setting, and so the students who are in the green here are unsure of what's going on. They're going to want and expect that when they come back to school this year, that it's like it was last year. And it's unfortunately not going to be that way for them. And everyone is going to be stressed. The students might be afraid. My own sons who are adults now both suffered from anxiety. One still really suffers with it and works hard to overcome that. He's 22 and he really doesn't like leaving the house these days. He is really afraid of whether he might get sick or whether he could get someone else sick. So there are going to be those students who are afraid. In the library, we really get to see sometimes what they're like in a different setting, and they expose some of their maybe vulnerabilities with us that they don't do in other settings. So you just want to be sensitive to what the students might be feeling. And then the same thing goes for the teachers. We all know our colleagues are afraid. We're in an office building here at School Library System. And on Monday of this week, we went from being at 50% to being at 100% 5 days a week. So the entire staff is here. Now, that seemed pretty scary because we were used to only having half of the people here. And now how is it going to be? Was it going to be crowded? Were people going to be wearing their masks? There was just a lot of uncertainty around it. And, one of the things I focused on in the first day was really social and emotional and energetic wellness, right? For ourselves, what our intent was. We want to try and hold that feeling that everyone is in that same position, and they may not have the tools. Nobody may have told them that it's okay to feel afraid. We don't know who they've lost or who's vulnerable in their circles. So we also want to be sensitive to our colleagues and what has gone on in their lives and what they're dealing with and trying to come back this year. We're not school psychologists. We're not, professional social workers or anything like that. But I know that in my buildings, I often did feel like I was a go-to person to listen to people. When they had a rough time, they knew where to find me. I was accessible. They always knew I was in the library. I did take a break and have, prep periods, but they knew where to find me anytime they had a free moment. And if I was available, they would share. And that went for students and teachers. So we have an opportunity to support our colleagues in that way that maybe other people don't. I have the administrators down here in the building. It can be school building administrators, it can be district administrators. They're overwhelmed. And one of the things that I am getting from my librarians in our region is that they're not getting much direction or communication necessarily from their administrators. And again, they're also overwhelmed with the logistics. I cannot imagine what it must be like to think about bringing 300 kids into a school, um, and how to schedule that and how to arrange that and how to make sure that you are going to be able to keep them safe and healthy, and the weight of that responsibility, to protect their staff, to protect their students, and then to protect their own personal lives, on the other side of their day. So, so these are people that we want to understand where they're at when we're communicating with them. And then the families, um, the families have gone through 3 months of education where they weren't prepared to have their kids at home. They weren't prepared to be at home. They may or may not have had a good experience with how their child's emergency remote crisis teaching went. Um, I am, again, grateful that my children are adults, and that I don't have to deal with this craziness in deciding, do I want to keep my kids home? Am I able to keep my kids home? Maybe there's conflict over the fact that they want to keep their kids home, but they can't. Maybe there's been job loss or financial stress. Maybe some of my best friends have 4 children, ages 3 to 13, and they're both teachers. And they really had an interesting time with the logistics of remote teaching. They're fortunate that they had, adequate broadband internet service, they had adequate devices, but just the logistics of how to get kids where they needed to be for Zoom lessons, while they also needed to teach their Zoom lessons, with a 3-year-old who couldn't go to grandma and grandpa's because they are a vulnerable part of the vulnerable population. It was just a logistical nightmare, and these are people that value education and are teachers, and they had such a difficult time. So I just can't imagine what parents that really don't have a background or maybe just the physical capacity to do that, what that must have been like. So I'm really about trying to be empathetic. I think that's the biggest word if I was going to come up with one. Whenever you're communicating with parents, whenever you're planning things, just be empathetic. Understand that your experience may or may not be similar to theirs, and we want to try and take that social emotional piece that we know is one of those skills that librarians tend to be good at. We're sharers, we're helpers, and we have that opportunity to allow people to see us in that light right now. So when we are talking about communicating with these different groups, the big thing for me is, how are we going to do that? We have to think about those modalities. We talked about taking one of our skills and how we wanted to teach that into a high flex model that we talked about yesterday, where you have the lesson and you're going for that sweet spot where you can take it, and if it needs to be administered in an in-person setting, you know how you're going to do that. If it's going to be in a hybrid model where some students are getting that lesson virtually and some are getting it in person, you know how you're going to do that. Or if it's going to be fully remote, how you can do that. So how are you going to now communicate with those students, whether it be about a lesson or about their information and instructional needs, or what their goals are, or their intent, especially when we're talking about the administrators. So there are a few different ways, and there are plenty of technology tools that we can use to do that. A newsletter is one way to go about that. There is something called SMORE, which I personally don't have experience with, but I know that some of the librarians have been doing that. Your district or your building might also have a newsletter that's going out either via email or maybe still print, I don't know. So you want to find out if that's something that you haven't done in the past. How can you be incorporated into that? Because it's going to be an important tool for you right now. The other thing is, if it is in a remote or hybrid way, how are you going to connect with these different groups of people not in person? We had a few, so Lynn had said she loves S'more and it's limited unless you pay for it. And Wakelet and Google Docs, yes. Actually, we had, one of our districts did a presentation. It's on our LibGuide under Zoom meetings. They did hyperdocs that were going out in the district grade level emails. And because it was all remote, they wanted to give kids built-in lessons, but with choice. And so what they did is they made like a little hyperlinked Google Doc that went out, and it had like some makerspace crafts that they put in there that would be things that parents had at home. They put in, whatever the theme was for the week. One week they did space, and they had all sorts of little links to Pebble Go. Some of them were their paid resources, their paid library resources. Other were free things. And they did a whole lesson on that. So if you're lost for ideas, you're going to find, and maybe I should have put another little outsider here for our community, right? I mean, as librarians, we really do share a lot of what we create with each other. And, I'm personally on a lot of the Facebook groups for librarians. There's one for Future Ready Libraries or librarians. There's an ALA think tank. There's also Twitter. I don't know if you're on Twitter, but Twitter has a real lively library Twitter, they call it. And you can find other librarians to follow, and they share ideas and they share lessons, and we're really good at sharing information and how to get something done. So don't forget about the community. And then another thing is office hours. So this is done on a college level a lot. I am available for you to come in during these time periods. And that could be an office hour, your prep period or your lunch, if you're willing to do that. But if you are remote or you don't want people to maybe come in and sit down in your office, you can set up Zoom office hours. You can put that in a newsletter. I know for parents, you wouldn't want it to be after hours, but there are apps like I think it's called Calendly, Calendly, yes, calendly.com, where you can have people schedule times when they're available for you, or you can just say, I'll be in my Zoom room if you want to meet me there. Anybody can set up a free Zoom account, and or you can do it with Google Meet. And if you make yourself available for that time period and only that time period, and you only share it with people that you know and trust, you wouldn't necessarily want to have students doing that. And obviously, if you're going to be meeting with students, you want to make sure that you're using something that is compliant with Ed Law 2D in New York State, and that is, something that your school is using. But for your teachers, do it however it works for you and for them. I saw in the Future Ready Libraries, I believe it was, yesterday, that somebody posted that a student, they were doing a lesson, this was in another state, they were doing a lesson with some of the students, virtually, their remote setting. And the kids were like, can we eat lunch with you? And because the kids wanted to eat lunch together. That's something that, if you're sitting in your office or in your library and you're willing to supervise, or even at home, you're willing to supervise kids eating lunch together on Zoom. She wrote about how the kids were so excited to be showing each other the things and eating together and chatting in a way that almost felt like if they were together in the cafeteria at school. So there are things that we can do that we wouldn't necessarily normally be willing to do, although I know that a lot of us allow the kids to come on lunch, or would, if there was a special circumstance, allow kids to maybe even eat lunch with you in your office. I had done that at least. So I'm figuring if I did it, there's probably some other librarians who have done it. Do what you're comfortable with. Again, I never want you to feel out of alignment. Even on a professional level, your values or what your intent is needs to stay aligned with what your priorities are for your position and what your actions are. Those things you want it. It's okay to feel a little wavy sometimes, but you really want to try and keep those things aligned. That is when we feel our best, we retain our energy, and we are best able to serve our buildings and do our best work. So I will be honest that there really isn't anything else that I have that I want to teach with you. So what I'd like to do is open it up. I know we didn't get a lot of people that were able to come for all 5 days, but I do have a few of you here with me. And I'd like to hear, what you're thinking about in terms of relationships or priorities or the high flex model, or just reopening in general with the uncertainty that's happening. Or maybe now that you've started back in your building, you're feeling a little bit more certain. I'm going to stop sharing, and we can chat, or if you would like, I can turn off the recording at this point so we can feel a little bit more free to talk about concerns. But like I said, your names are not appearing in the videos at all. So does anybody want to answer me in the chat?
Hello. I was actually just moving furniture while I was listening because the custodians came in like 5 minutes after I started talking, like, oh, can we put the chairs back in? I'm like, no, not yet.
Not yet.
But the thing about the lunchtime, like I had said previously about the global read aloud, and they had specifically said it's best to do it when you can actually have the kids come and eat their lunch in your room. That's if if you're having it. I don't know exactly. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. At the moment, I'm just trying to get my room ready so that I can do something. And I'm trying to figure out how to make it. I don't know. I was showing in the beginning. Have like aisles. Try to keep them away from the stacks. Doing curbside pickup or delivery, depending on how it's going to work for them. Depending on what the teacher needs and what the students need. And then, like, I got an email, and teacher's like, well, I'm going to use Epic. I'm like, no, you can't use Epic. The kids can use it at home if their parents get it to them, but you cannot tell them to use it in school. So we're trying to get Mayan through the district, and then I have some ebooks, and then I have some, still some free stuff that's on my website. So I just sent her all that. And just basically said, when, I don't know what the logistics are, but I'll know more after our superintendent's conference day, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, kind of, how it's working with this block scheduling and stuff.
Right. So one of the things I'm going to suggest is that you also, look at what the public library has available. from an ebook standpoint, although they also have the issue with not necessarily having simultaneous access. For a
I'm
read aloud, you
trying to
would,
get the Sora. I've been trying to get Sora set up since the pandemic, and it's been a real big issue with the to law and my superintendent helping me. He's just so backlogged. So he told me he did it. He's got his assistant working, but nothing's been connected. And I know that then they could access the library books that way, and it would be filtered properly. So at least, and the
yeah,
first,
if you have Overdrive, then Sora is the app that can be used. You know, and I don't know if you know, because you're in a different region, I'm not sure whether, you know, if you have another way to access them from the classroom
no, it has
necessarily.
to be through the Sora, and the platform is free, but um, it just hasn't been. I haven't been given the access yet, and then we have to hook it up with the public library, and it's supposed to go through ClassLink. It's supposed to be happening. I just don't know when. So
Okay, yeah, so, you know, everything takes time, but the public libraries, especially on Long Island, they do have relatively large collections of ebooks, and they also have the ability for you to request something. So there is, I know Nassau County Library Association is having their Children's Division meeting next week, and I am going to be going because it's important, I think, at this time where there is so much uncertainty that we look to partner and leverage the collections that we have accessible, both for us as teachers and for our students and families. Um, the public libraries are already doing curbside service. Some of them also have uh, in-person browsing available. So, you know, to find out what is going on in your local public library, whether or not you're able to give electronic cards. I know Nassau County was giving digital cards. I believe they still are. Now, I know that there are some families and students that are, you know, not able to do that for whatever reason. And you know, perhaps you could work something out to, you know, first if there's a specific situation. But we need to work together, I think, you know, more than ever. And I know that the public library systems are definitely open to that. So if you're not in my region and you're not going, you know, you wouldn't be partnering with a Nassau County librarian, reach out to your school library system director so that they can, you know, that they can tell you the right person, because I'm not familiar with the other areas right now.
Judy,
Yes.
hi. What I did, I actually reached out to the school district's library and I asked for dummy cards.
Okay.
And I guaranteed them the students would only use it for the audiobooks or ebooks. And that way it's never a concern of it go missing. It just disappears. The library could not have been more accommodating. The special ed department was beyond excited and thrilled. It worked out to be a very, very good I'm so thrilled I did it. So it's a
Oh,
nice,
yeah, it's wonderful news.
yeah. And they couldn't have been happier because they do want to partner with us. They just never know how to go about it. So it worked out well.
That is true. I really feel like, you know, I spent my last year, I worked in a public library as the head of reference for the first time. I had worked part-time in libraries, you know, in public libraries, like many of us do. But I was the head of reference full-time for a year at the Bangor Public Library in Maine. And I was like, I'm gonna partner with a high school librarian. Well, I mean, I emailed her and we talked about collaborating and doing something. But the fact is that we all have our jobs that we're trying to do, and it's difficult, you know, that we have demands, we have time limitations. So it's hard to collaborate when you have two separate organizations, when the only incentive is your desire to do it, right? Like, it's not like in industry, you make more money maybe, or, you know, it's marketing value. I mean, we would have marketing value for sure, but it's just hard to do. But right now, especially with these digital cards or the dummy cards, there is no risk, right? If a student checks out a book or accesses an article, you know, it's okay. They're allowed to do that. You know, it's going to go back right away. It automatically goes back after the 2 or 3 weeks. And it's about access. They have, excuse me, in the public library, a real desire to make sure that everyone has access. So, so it is. I'm really glad to hear that that's the way it worked out. So definitely reach out to the public libraries that are in your districts. They may even be, you know, be willing to give the teachers cards. I know not every public library does that, but many will. Okay, so definitely take a look at that.
Hi, Judy. This is Patty Lopez. How are you?
Hi, good. How are you? I'm glad you got your sound working.
Yeah, they gave us Chromebooks yesterday, and I'm moving from my Mac, which I love, to a Chromebook, which so far this is my first time on it, but it's a different beast than my Mac. So I thank you for your patience. I had 2 questions to ask you or anybody else who might have answers. So I did bring up at a meeting with my principal about Sora. We do have Overdrive. I think, is Overdrive a component of Follett? Is that correct?
No,
No?
no.
So,
Oh, yeah, it's a separate company and they don't actually even integrate.
okay, so if I want to sound knowledgeable, what is Overdrive? And I know that that's free. That's a platform.
It's not, no.
It's not.
So,
Okay, good.
okay.
Okay.
So no, it's an excellent question because, you know, we hear these things thrown around. So
Right.
Overdrive is who they are a huge provider of ebooks and audiobooks. And they've been around for, you know, probably a decade or so, about a decade. And they really started out mostly providing ebooks and audiobooks on their platform, which was computer based, or e-reader based, with the public libraries. Okay, that was their original thing. If you're in Suffolk County right now, that's who they are using. Okay.
So we're in Suffolk County, so.
Okay, so library was what it was called.
Yes.
If you recall, and you could, it was very difficult to get onto a Nook or at first. Now Overdrive has a relationship with Amazon, so you can purchase books for a Kindle on Overdrive, you know, through, or borrow, and then they have a relationship with them. The public libraries now use the app called Libby.
Yes, okay,
Okay, so Libby is
okay.
just the tool that you use to access the Overdrive books.
Okay,
Now, Sora so Libby is a free app. Sora is another free app. And Sora also accesses the books that whoever provides it, whoever you sign up for, has through Overdrive. So Overdrive is the supplier. There are 2 front-facing apps, Libby and Sora. Libby is for adults and public libraries. Sora is for children and schools. So Sora only allows you to access K-12 collections or the children's collections in the public library.
So if I'm going to explain this to my administrator, Overdrive is the company, and that supplies,
yes.
right. So do we have to purchase access to Overdrive, or is it?
Yes.
So Overdrive is not free.
Overdrive is not free. So during the pandemic, Overdrive offered, I guess it was what, 100 free access to 100 free books through Sora. So
Okay.
it was, we'll give this to you for free now. Try and see how it works. So you can still have Sora on your phone or on your device, right? But what's going to happen is those free books will disappear. Now,
Okay.
they may offer a few free books, right? Maybe they'll offer some. I don't know, because they're a company that their goal is to sell, not to offer
They
for
still
free.
they still have it for free at the moment, and
Right.
and even if you don't have any purchase, you could still access your public library's collection.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's the thing. If you can get, like Lorraine got, a dummy library card for your students who don't have one, they can access the public library's collection through the Sora app. If you have your own, so there's like a base fee for participating in Overdrive. And again, I'm pretty new here, so I
Okay.
don't know
But no,
all
at
the
least
details.
at
But
least you're
then,
giving me the vocabulary of
right,
it.
you want to feel like you, when you're communicating, see, and it's totally relevant because
And
now
I
you
even
have,
attended a Sora class, Judy, so I'm still trying to tweeze it out.
yeah, well, because it's about seeing how those relationships work, right?
Right.
Like for me, that's the way my mind works. You can see that from my slides, like I need to know how things connect to one another in order to really be effective. But so if you subscribe to Overdrive and purchase titles, and the public library has their collection, your student or your teacher would be able to check out books from both collections through the Sora app. So it is very convenient and very nice for students and families, I think. Um, if you can afford to purchase books, they would have more access, but talk to your public library because the students would still have, the students and possibly the teachers would still have access. The thing is that they'd have to have, like, it wouldn't work for if you wanted everybody to read, a particular title, right? Because they would have to own that many copies of it. But I don't get anything for this, but they did come up with a new model, I think, where they're leasing, like class sets.
Yes, I got the pricing guide, and one of the pricing, and it's interesting because they have their pricing, they have 4 different categories of pricing, and it's pretty fluid, like you could be in more than one category, and one of those categories would include to lease classroom, multiple copies of a
Right.
book. But
Yeah.
I just
So
wanted to wrap my brain around it a little bit. I mentioned it at a faculty meeting and I felt a little bit or a lot out of my league.
right.
And I was told to, email the head of my department. And that's another thing. It's just the timing of everything. Everybody is so overwhelmed. I'm just trying to unearth myself just to come out from the bottom of all of my different schedules and the science and social studies that I'm supposed to be teaching. So I don't
So
know if this is a good time to make this suggestion or to just let it lay and wait or,
so I think okay, so now this is going back about a decade. There was a book called, oh, now I had it a second ago, but it's a leadership book that I read. It's yellow. No,
yes, okay.
now I sound like my kid, like the kids. It was yellow.
Yes, I know the book. I think I have it
It was
somewhere.
like leadership on the line, maybe. Leading on the
Maybe.
line, leadership on the line. It was about leading in times of crisis, and having that bird's eye view, and how sometimes you put something out there, and maybe it won't stick, but that doesn't mean don't put it out there again at another time. So if you suggest it and people are overwhelmed now, hold on to it. Send an email and just say, let me know if this is something you're interested in the future. And then it comes up because right now, the logistics piece, may just be too much for people. And
Right.
maybe in a couple of weeks, there'll be more of an access. We're still in that fight or flight crisis mode, I think. And you know, that will hopefully sometime in
Mm,
the near future start to settle out a little bit.
okay.
So
But in the meantime, reach out to my public librarians and
I would
ask.
reach, yes, because that is they definitely have a collection available right away,
Right.
right away. And then if you can get access for your students and your teachers to that, and show them that, then if they decide that they want it, that's great. You can add to that collection by having your own. I would definitely recommend reaching out to your school library system
Oh,
director.
yes, Sarah, she recommended that we attend that Sora. She made available the Sora
Right. Okay.
workshop. Yeah, yeah.
And
Okay.
speak to the sales reps, you know. Now, you mentioned Follett Destiny, you know, they do have their own ebooks. Right now, they have not had an app, I don't think.
No,
And their reader could be a little clunky at times,
that's
but
it.
I do think that they're in the process of updating that.
Okay.
So, you know, they're like, oh, okay, let's catch up. And there's going to be something available for that. So
Yeah.
you can purchase those and have those readily available in your Destiny catalog. So
They
that
don't.
is another way to go. Mac and Via also has ebooks. You know, there are other things out there besides Overdrive. So, you know, take a look around, but at least
Okay.
the public library does have the access to Overdrive through Sora.
All right. Thank you so much. And if the group wouldn't mind me asking one more ridiculous question.
No
um,
such thing.
So I see a lot of emails about what, if is it legal to do read alouds and, like, are we violating copyright, or should I worry about that or not worry about that? So far, I haven't worried about it, but I'm wondering what other people are doing. Is it okay to present books online, and do you need, I don't
So,
know.
so my there's a range of what's acceptable to not acceptable. If you are in, like, let's say, recording a video and putting it in Google Classroom,
Yes.
it is absolutely 100% fair use.
Okay.
Because it's not out there to the public. So you're
I
teaching
see.
the same way if you were reading that book aloud to students and they recorded you.
Okay.
But if you're going to put it up, let's say on YouTube for a public, there are several settings on YouTube. You can make it a private video where only people that you share it with can look at it, just like a document, or you can make it public. If you are reading a book on video and making it public, then you want to make sure that it's either one of the books that publishers have said or authors have said, it's okay, I'm opening it up for librarians to read aloud during this time period. You may have to take it down at some point, but if you're keeping it private just for your students, it's absolutely fair use.
And is that the same, does that hold true for putting the actual print of the book, the text of the book online? Because I find some of my teachers are scanning the books.
That is not okay ever. No.
I know, I don't know how to
Yeah. So that's not
approach this
okay
subject.
ever. Yeah,
Okay.
that never is fair
Yeah.
use, because the now.
So I never said that. I don't
Yeah,
want to
no,
get
no,
anybody in
no. And you
trouble.
need, again, you know,
I'm,
I mean,
I'm
here's,
watching it happen and I'm cringing.
yeah, I mean, I had a chairperson ask me once if I could photocopy a book, like Bud Not Buddy or something.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, no,
No.
we can't do that. And the reason why is that you're supposed to be purchasing copies of those books,
Right.
right? Like that's
Right.
what copyright's about. It's about protecting the interests of the
Right.
author and publisher. So if you are scanning that book so that you don't order multiple copies of
Right.
it, then that is where the violation is taking
Okay,
place.
I thought that I was correct about that, and I just want to be able to speak, again, to speak knowledgeably, but
Right.
it looked like that. And again, I don't think that any publishers during, at the beginning of the pandemic, were going to jump all over you. But as this continues, I think they're going to get more and more savvy to what's going on and want you
Right.
to purchase some kind of,
Now, fair use always allows for, I believe it's like 10% or, like there's certain things that, if you wanted to select a page, let's say, to be able to use an instruction or a recording of the teacher showing the book and analyzing the text or something like
Right.
that, like you might on a document camera.
Mhm.
That's and it is only living in that closed classroom, environment.
Right.
But to scan the book to put it up for students to read, now you're going too far.
Now you're going too far.
Yeah.
All right, Judy, thank you.
So,
Thank you for your time and your,
so I really appreciate, that you were all here. I hope that you received some value from this week. I hope that you'll stay in touch if you have any successes with anything that came out of what we did, and if you want to share how you were able to use a high flex model, please email me. I will put my email in the chat box again in case you didn't get it before. But even those of you who are not in my region, I'm definitely interested in hearing about how you may or may not have been able to apply these things, or what worked, what didn't work. And the thing is that some things are not going to work, right? We're doing the best we can. We're going to have successes, and we're going to have failures too. And you're modeling for the kids that it is okay to do that. Okay.
Thank you, Judy. Stay safe.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you,
you so
Judy.
much, and
Be
I
well.
wish you all the best in your return to school for this year.
Thank you, Judy.
Sure.